as we get on to the focus for the day, Esther Wachuku joins me on the show, and together we'll be doing this, of course.
Thank you, Moses. All right, so our first story today is one of those that are better imagined than experienced. But alas, the facts are too stark for anyone to live in denial. Here's a story. Nigeria has spent over 13 trillion naira or $74 billion on fuel subsidies in 16 years, which is between 2005 and 2021. The Executive Secretary in Nigeria Extractive Industry Transnational Initiative NATI, Orji Ogbonnaya Orji, who stated this at a policy dialogue on oil swap in Abuja last week, said the removal of fuel subsidy and fuel deregulation of the petroleum sector will end all swaps, which have also failed. Now, Nigerian newspaper Daily Trust reports and adding an estimated 6 trillion naira spending on petrol subsidy between 2022 and June 2023 to the 13 trillion naira fuel subsidies cost. The amount would have reached 19 trillion naira in about 17 years, citing NATI's recent policy brief on subsidy. Orji said, and I read, Nigeria spent over 13 trillion naira on fuel subsidies between 2005 and 2021. The figure, in relative terms, is equivalent to Nigeria's entire budget for health, education, agriculture, and defense in the last 5 years, and almost the capital expenditure for 10 years between 2011 and 2020. Now, in spite of this spending, the NATI head said Nigeria continues to suffer inefficient supply arrangements, including scarcity and its attendant fuel queues. Orji noted that while the country was bleeding through subsidies, Nigeria lost another 16.25 trillion naira from 619.7 million barrels of crude oil to theft in 12 years. The volume of crude oil losses represents a loss of more than 140,000 barrels per day. Quite an unfortunate scenario right here. And in order for us to actually have this conversation, diversing it properly, we have joining us virtually Victor Ohai. Victor, good morning and welcome to VOP this morning. How are you, Victor?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning.
All right, so you have the intro whereby we're almost, short of 140 million barrels. We've had serious scenarios when it comes to costing, petrol subsidy, the amount spent on it. What would we say for supposedly Africa's largest producer of crude oil? And this is a kind of indebtedness we found ourselves. What do you say on this?
I think that this is a mindless policy, selfish, if you ask me. Subsidies are in themselves not anything bad at all. I mean, the motive for instituting in the first place seemed okay at the time. But let's look at even subsidies, not just petroleum. Let's look at countries like America, for instance, the US, where agriculture is subsidized. And the reason for that subsidy is you have local farmers, one, two, to make American agriculture competitive in the global market. So otherwise you find farmers producing so much and then a lot of it going to waste. So their grain reserve and all that is huge. If there's a famine anywhere in the world or in America, America is in a position to feed the rest of the world, or at least its citizens. That is mindful subsidy that makes sense. In the case of petroleum here, subsidy originally, which was, the first time it was introduced, I think was around 1973 because of the global price, the way it rose at the time. It was supposed to just help ameliorate the effect or the impact here in Nigeria. But alas, you know how it is here. It's like when we say whatever goes up in Nigeria never comes down. And people naturally will always position them strategically to take advantage of such opportunities. And so subsidy, you will recall several governments have attempted to remove it. I recall that in 2016, after Buhari came in, we found out that there was no provision, budgetary provision for in 2016 for subsidy removal. This was obviously done by the previous administration. He had to reintroduce it. Every one of them, like, at the point in time, they said there's no subsidy or that they're taking away subsidy. They keep bringing it back, and I'm asking, for whose benefit is that subsidy? Granted, there are times when they have said they will attempt to remove subsidy, and then the citizens will protest because, of course, there's no trust between government and the people. But generally, we have seen that subsidies have not benefited anybody, but a few people who I would say are cronies of government. And in any case, the subsidies themselves have benefited our neighbors more than those of us in Nigeria here, because far there is a lot of export of these commodities to neighboring countries, where and consequence scarcity in the border states, because these things are more attractive outside Nigeria. So you find that there's a lot of diversion. It also pays these local distributors of the commodity to export these to neighboring countries because they are able to make more profit from it. So, as they say, who subsidy help?
All right, but hey, NATO is actually saying that thieves stole 16 trillion naira in terms of the oil. They stole 16 trillion naira. We've actually had oil vandalism. Sometimes we've also had pirates who tend to redivert when this produce is at the seas, at the high sea. But here is a scenario. We have the Nigerian Navy, who's supposed to be responsible for ensuring that these things come in safely, and they're supposed to fight out the pirates. We've also known that for years on years, we've had individuals or some, international private companies who redivert this oil to wherever it is that they have, where they keep their store or their own oil tank farm. And it is not like the federal government hasn't known about this all this while. But hey, there's 16 trillion naira that these companies, or rather the NATO, is saying that all thieves stole. What happens then?
First of all, let me appreciate the Navy for protecting the Nigeria's territorial water.
Okay.
And the authorities are doing their best, but let the truth be told. One of the most lucrative appointments in the Navy or the Army is to be asked to go and man these areas where there are oil thefts. I can assure you that whoever is doing such an appointment is congratulated by family, friends, and colleagues. And the reason is simple. When they go there, there's nobody, none of them has ever gone there and come back the same in terms of how rich or wealthy they are. Because the truth is, there is no, it's like we saw the police, they know every criminal in the area, so unless they don't want to work. So when they go out there, I don't know how many times we hear that if we have a military or a navy that works as it should, I see no reason why we should not be hearing about these people caught on a daily basis. Because you can't allow so much. The reason I love a country like China, for instance, is that economic crimes, even in the US, not in the US capital, but in China, for instance, economic crimes are capital crimes. They attract capital punishment. Here, they just slap you on the wrist and say, go and see no more. Or they just put you in jail for a little period, and then you come back and continue to enjoy your loot and begin to finance other politicians. If you can't participate in politics directly anymore, you become a godfather. The level of tolerance or impunity and tolerance for corruption in this country is just too much. The biggest problem we have is corruption. The people who are supposed to man these things go in there and they begin to make money from these places and begin to settle people who are on top. People who should question them, they settle them so that they can further entrench themselves there. If you go there and you settle there, you're a good boy. That's the situation. And that's why it's going to be difficult. Oil theft will continue. I'm not a prophet of doom, but it will continue because it is convenient. They make money from these people. They know these thieves, and these thieves settle them. And when they settle them, they in turn settle people who should query them. Because the money is just too much. The kind of money that they present to those who are supposed to question them, nothing can happen. Look at NNPC today. Now, suddenly, the NNPC can no longer, you can no longer scrutinize NNPC anymore. Their activities are now more shrouded in secrecy, unlike before, where you could even get a bit of, you could even invoke, what you call it now, the transparency, what's that thing called? I keep forgetting.
That's next.
Of information bill, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a useless bill, has not been effective, you know. But right now, you can't even query NNPC anymore. What information they want to give you, what they will give to you, you know. So these things continue. Unfortunately, I don't know. This country is so blessed because we're hemorrhaging on a daily basis. What happens in this country, if it happened anywhere else, I don't know how many countries can survive it.
Now let's look at what happens in the country. Like you rightly said, the Nigerian Navy doing a great job. Yes, so we must compliment them. I don't know if you recall, in 2022, yeah, August 2022, a Norwegian ship came into Nigerian waters and headed straight for Akpo oil field. Now, trying to wrap my head around it, how did this even happen? Now, the Norwegian Navy ship headed straight to Akpo oil field and took crude oil, Nigeria's crude oil, from Akpo oil field and was on its way out of Nigeria. And, the Nigerian Navy had to apprehend the ship on the waters and said they had no authorization to even be in Nigeria. Now, one wonders, how did this even happen? Because, I mean, for a ship to come, they must have been in collaboration with some people, some agencies, maybe the NNPC, maybe, but some agencies in Nigeria. How do we make sense of this? And talking about how secure our waters have been so far.
Well, I can tell you this for free. I don't know if you have ever heard, but I'm in a position where sometimes people come and they say, "Oh, we have crude oil for sale, or do you know anybody?" When they think you are a bit influential, I may know some people. They say, "There's crude oil here. Do you know anybody who wants to buy?" You want to leverage on your connections, whether buy or sell. What that tells me is, I'm just one individual. Do you know how many more people they are approaching like that? So, do you know anybody who wants to buy? Do you know we have, some may be what you call 419 without that, but many more may not be. I haven't taken time to find that. I have no interest in that. But I can tell you that the same way they're approaching people, because obviously there's so many who are hungry, who are getting this thing, and they're just looking for buyers all over the world. And when these questions come up, people in authority know. For a Norwegian ship to have had the courage to come to our waters, to load, and be on its way out before it was apprehended, obviously that is only one example. It tells you that this happens all the time. And the reason perhaps you heard this one in the news is that probably they did not settle the right quarters, or they didn't come through the right quarters. If they were connected well enough, if they had spoken to the people who were in charge, you would never hear about it. This, I can guarantee, and I tell you, is something that happens on a daily basis. Otherwise, how did we arrive at the amount of loss, the several trillions that have been lost? How did we arrive at some figures? And this is only the figures these are the figures they have. What about what we don't know? If they could calculate so much, that we have lost so much, who is taking them out? Because if they say we lost so much, this 16 trillion or how many trillion, if we lost that many trillion, it means this is, with the knowledge of those in authority, that thieves could come to this country and steal oil worth 16 trillion naira over a period of time. It means they are aware. So the big question is, who stole this money? Yeah? If they knew that this much was going on, what have they done about it? The only effort I've seen so far is what they've done with, what's it called now? Tom Polo. where they said, okay, man the waters for us, take a percentage of of the money to ensure that we can that some of these. In fact, that's even for oil pipeline vandalism.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the ones on the high sea. That's for vandalism. There may be a sense if you take a percentage so that you can mitigate the loss of so much. But can we get whether it is the Navy is supposed to be our torpedo in the high seas? Are they doing it? How come? Who are we holding responsible for 16 trillion naira worth? Now they're coming to tell us.
Now,
That,
Victor,
yes.
okay.
Yes, interestingly, that you mentioned Tom Polo and
Yes.
his men defending the waters. Also in 2022, last year, sometime in October.
About waters, I think it's pipeline. I don't know about the water.
No, it's okay, it's okay. Um, Sometime in 2022, the Tom Polo team arrested a vessel carrying crude oil and handed them over to the Nigerian Navy. I don't know if you remember that news. Now, instead of going to at least take back the crude oil, the Nigerian Navy was asked to destroy it, and they basically blew it up right in the waters, and it was destroyed because if Nigerians were saying if they had arrested the people there, they would have retrieved the crude oil, which we will sell back, to the people we do business with, and it would have interrogated them to find out who their sponsors were. But unfortunately, that wasn't done. Instead, it was destroyed, and no talk of it came up again after that.
It was a theatrical performance.
Pardon?
It was a theatrical performance. What they simply
Apparently.
did then was a spectacle that would deviate from the main issue. Like you rightly pointed out, what should have been done? Seize the ship and convert it, and take the crude oil and sell it, and then bring the people to justice, and we would have heard. But what they did now was just a spectacular theatrical performance that deviated from the real issue. So when that happens, what I say, we have blown the ship. We have, and that crude oil is like nothing compared. They could afford to do that, but obviously somebody's track was being covered. And I can assure you that when Tombolo would have been told to behave himself after that, that is not everything he catch, every person he arrests that he should go public with. They probably went public, and they should inform them first. I'm not there, but I cannot rule it out because I'm sure he would do his job well. But there will be those who will say, "Look, we put you there, and so whatever happens, let us know." So Nigeria is a drama.
It is a day. Now, the idea actually of subsidy is meant to spur investment in activities that raise the capacities of an economy, such as education, agriculture, entrepreneurship, and infrastructure. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, subsidy is meant to enrich the elite, possibly the lifeblood of the rich. At what point will the government understand the necessity of subsidy and properly utilize it in the sectors that these monies are actually meant to improve?
Well, I'm glad that you brought this up here. Of course, Rakol at any point in time when the program. But see, if you do a cost benefit analysis, you want to say to yourself, which is more important? Subsidy, which means reduce, quote unquote, cost of petrol to enrich a few, and not just enrich a few, but also the cost to the people you are giving fuel at a cheaper price is healthcare, education, infrastructure. Has anybody done a cost benefit analysis to find out which benefits Nigerians more? Or are we just keeping subsidy because of political experience we want to be seen as good people? But whether you like it or not, petroleum price keep rising every day. When Jonathan raised the price from 65 to 141 to remove subsidy, it cost him. Let me just say, literally cost him his government. Everyone screamed and all that, and he was forced to beat a retreat. And I can't rule out the fact that those who are enjoying subsidy are sponsoring, if you excuse my saying so, the media and propaganda against any government that attempts to, remove subsidy. Now from 65 to 141, if they remove it at 141, we probably would not have covered much more than that. But today, what are we paying? Yesterday, I bought fuel at 205 at the filling station, and I'm sure in some states they pay as much as 300 or more pump price for petroleum. So I think that if, and I'm shocked also that the incoming administration, that the current administration, I'm sure in collaboration with the incoming administration, have together agreed not to remove subsidy for whatever reason, I don't know. This would have been a great opportunity. The president announced it in the budget, subsidy was removed, but now, well, it's the same government taking over from, the same party taking over from the same party. So now they have agreed to leave it for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't know what we have benefited from subsidies. I think this money that goes to a few, even if they bring it back as a subsidy, it won't go to a few pockets. Now, even people are stealing. Many more Nigerians will benefit from such money because they will be used more for the greater interest of Nigeria. Unfortunately, this money for subsidy that is saved is going into private accounts in foreign countries and only benefiting those economies in those countries and not helping the Nigerian economy in any way.
Victor, I'm actually glad you said that because there are a host of players, like you mentioned, that benefit from this subsidy. And one of the things they do is that they inflate figures for all imports. They over invoice the government for the cost of the imports. They use their political connections and influence to scuttle attempts to remove them. Now, you recall that the clamor for fuel subsidy removal has actually been on for almost 4 years now, or possibly, like you rightly said, since former President Goodluck Bella Jonathan's administration. Unfortunately, these political elites who know that they benefit greatly, immensely from the subsidy have actually looked for several reasons for it not to be removed, considering the fact that the subsidy is not beneficial to the common man. The common man doesn't actually feel like they are being subsidized or feel is being subsidized for them. But let's look at the adverse effects of, completely removing fuel subsidy. Some persons say that economists actually know that with the current state of the Nigerian economy, there will definitely be inflation, all right? And of course, there'll be a high cost of living. Do you think the Nigerian economy is ready to sustain, right? Are they ready to sustain the effect of the total removal of fuel subsidy?
Okay, so in 2016, for instance, Yemi Shibajo was quoted as saying that Nigeria saves about 15.4 billion monthly from non-payment of subsidy for the year. But as we know, the subsidy was later reinstated. Now, let me use that figure, 15.4 billion naira monthly. I don't know what ASU is asking for, but they will still come back. The total money ASU is asking for that caused our children to stay at home for almost a year or longer, I can't remember the period anymore. If you took a fraction of this and you were sending ASU, you know that problem would have been solved completely. And our universities, none of which is among the first 1,000 in the world, in the global ranking, a lot would have been done in the education sector. The health sector, for instance, that is like next to nothing. You see our doctors here, like they can't perform and they go abroad and they're like stars, working with the crude equipment that we have here. We can set up 5-star health facilities here and subsidize health in this country with that kind of money that is given to individuals on a monthly basis. I imagine what we can do with this subsidy if we put it into a power backbone. We're talking about power. For me, if power were more readily available and more stable, then it would make Nigerians more productive. The barber, for instance, with the money he spends on fuel, it pays that because electricity will not cost as much as what it uses to buy fuel for a generator where there's no light. So the benefits would have been greater, how do countries like Cotonou who are poor, Benin, who are poorer than us, how do they survive? They don't have subsidy and yet they survive. They don't have oil. They pay higher Go to Niger, Chad, and these other countries. They are surviving. We have all the money and everything. Who says Nigeria will collapse if you remove subsidy? You know, this is money that could have been used to develop this country. Dubai, I mean the UAE, they use their money, the money from petroleum. See what they've been able to make out of that. Turn a desert into a magical kingdom, so to say. These are the kind of things we can do with the kind of, if we have good leaders in this country, and yet we do not do that. All we're after is using that money to service a few. Of course, it's convenient because the over invoicing, who approves them? This money goes. We know the cost of this thing. These people know, and so when you over invoice, somebody has to approve it. To approve it, he gets a cut out of it, and this is settled. This is the people are settled. People benefit from it. That's why these things will persist. Of course, the benefits to us, if there is a removal of subsidy, is far greater than the cost of petroleum because it's been done before. The country didn't collapse from what the vice president said when they removed subsidy for a brief period. Why did they bring it back? Was fuel not even cheaper at the time than it is today? You know, there are other areas where subsidy has been removed for where there are no subsidies, for instance, I think diesel and maybe kerosene also, which is why they are where they are. But the economy still thrives. Companies are still producing. If we do that for petrol, yeah, I think that the money that comes in from that, if we put it in other sectors, will benefit this country far more than what the subsidy is doing for a few individuals rather than the greater movement.
Victor, that's an interesting one to actually consider. And again, importantly, we've always seen this kind of scenarios in this part of the world. One would actually say it is a kind of the West African plague when it comes to government and the people and putting the people first or considering the people first before themselves. Now, we are already in the second quarter of the year and a lot is actually hinged on the incoming administration where eventually the decision for the complete removal of fuel subsidy will definitely commence from June. By then the president-elect would have been sworn in. Now the scenario is this. A lot of investors are actually looking at how the economy is going to be modified at that period based on the economic policies that will be implemented by the incoming administration. It depends on those who will be in charge of his economic team. And the first thing that will be considered, considering the fact that Nigeria still relies heavily on oil produce and anything oil related, that is one of the areas where they would consider with policy implementation and of course new measures to help smoothing the economy while the administration commences. Do you think that at that point in time, the total removal of fuel subsidy should be the foremost, or they should possibly wait a little bit and see how the alternative will be definite? There will be a definite alternative before the complete or total removal of fuel subsidy. Like you rightly said, it is the common man that actually suffers from that.
I mean, for me, it's common sense. You're looking for tax revenue, you're looking for how to generate revenue internally. You're looking at customs to give you income. Now, off my head right now, I don't know what, I can't tell you immediately what's how much the customs bring in every month. But I mean, if I look at these figures from 2016 or 15.4, that's what they say, the country saves, saved at that time in 2016 monthly. I can imagine what that in our revenue will do for it. For me, I would look at it like extra income, like more like taxation. That's something. Instead of paying it out, if you bring in that money into the economy, uh, I mean, easily without thinking twice. I know that in 10 months, for instance, that's 1.54 trillion uh, uh, naira in 10 months, and in 12 months, obviously, I don't know how many trillions there. So you can see how much you would have we would have saved. So imagine that as part of the revenue that comes into the country. There's so much that we can get from. So for this incoming administration, I would have thought they would allow the Buhari administration take the pains of removing subsidy, and the flakes or whatever of removing subsidy, whatever will happen, let it happen and go with this administration so they can come in on a clean slate, knowing that they are not responsible for it. The government already volunteered to do that. I don't know why, they have decided to take it on, but we have to see what their plans are. I'm not in the economic team, so I don't know what their plans are. I don't know how they plan, what magic they plan to do, and how they plan to maintain subsidies and still whether they want to pass the burden to taxpayers, because obviously I know the incoming administration is going to be heavy on tax, which is okay. That's how you sustain economies. But I think that they should start with the low-hanging fruits first. The subsidy is the lowest hanging fruit right now to reflate our economy, to boost our revenue base, and I think that's one place they should start from. And if you want to hit the ground running from the very beginning.
All right, thank you, Victor Hi, for being with us right here on VAP this morning. We do appreciate your input on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, up next on VOP this morning, activities at tertiary hospitals may be paralyzed should the warning strike threatened by resident doctors come into effect. That's in a bit. Do stay tuned.